The New York Giants host the Dallas Cowboys Sunday night at MetLife Stadium. Locked On Cowboys co-host Marcus Mosher and I have everything you need to know about the top stories, matchups, and more on this special edition of Crossover Thursday coming your way next.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This Crossover Thursday episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first crossover edition of the 2023 NFL season. You got Patricia, Traina, and me, host of Locked On Giants, Marcus Mosher, co-host of Locked On Cowboys. And Marcus, big game to start the 2023 NFL season. New York Giants host the Dallas Cowboys Sunday Night Football, MetLife Stadium. It's going to be rocking.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like football season until we get Cowboys Giants on Sunday Night Football in week one. Like, we've been robbed of it the last couple of years because the NFL wanted Tom Brady on Sunday Night Football. But I love that we get this matchup back. It's going to be a lot of fun.
It sure is. A lot of storylines, a lot of key matchups, a lot of different predictions. And we're going to cover all that stuff here on today's crossover edition of Locked On Giants, Locked On Cowboys. And Marcus, since you're the visitor, let's kick things off with the key storylines coming out of the Cowboys. What do the Giant fans need to know about this weekend's game from the Dallas perspective?
Yeah, we've got a new play caller in Mike McCarthy, and I think Cowboy fans are really excited to see, well, maybe not excited. They're a little bit nervous to see what that looks like now that Kellen Moore is gone. The Cowboys offensive line has had some injuries through the training camp and preseason, including Tyler Smith. We'll see if he plays on Sunday, but I think they want to know, what's the difference between Kellen Moore and Mike McCarthy? Are they really going to run the ball more like Mike McCarthy suggested? He also said that Kellen Moore too often wanted to put too many points on the scoreboard, which seems a little weird to me, but I'm excited. I think Dak Prescott and Mike McCarthy are a really good fit with one another, but this is a good defense that they're going to be challenged by, especially with that pass rush up front with Dexter Lawrence, with Kayvon Thibodeau, with Leonard Williams. I'm really excited to see what this new look offense, how they perform on the field against this Giants defense.
You mentioned, Mike McCarthy being the new offensive play caller. I mean, how did they tweak the Cowboys' offensive personnel to maybe fit what McCarthy likes to do?
They just went out and got more receivers. Like, that's one thing that Mike McCarthy has always loved, is having a ton of weapons on the passing game. Think back to when they won the Super Bowl back in 2010. That's when they had Greg Jennings and Donald Driver and James Jones and Jordy Nelson. Like, they were just loaded at receiver. And I think Mike McCarthy wanted to make sure that they had enough receivers to run this style of offense. So they went out and got Brandon Cooks, who's been incredible in training camp. Michael Gallup is a full year removed now from his ACL injury. Jalen Tolbert, who was a third-round pick from last year's draft, is finally starting to put things together. And then, of course, they've got CeeDee Lamb. So what I expect, Patricia, is a lot of receivers on the field, a lot of spread formations that just challenge this secondary that, outside of Adoree Jackson, is pretty young and unproven.
Yeah, and for the New York Giants, of course, that's one of the key storylines, the young cornerbacks who are going to go up against those Cowboys receivers. But overall, bigger picture, the Giants roster, so much more upgraded. General Manager Joe Shane talked at the end of last year about closing the talent gap between the Giants and Dallas, and of course, the Giants and Philly. The Giants and Cowboys, I think that talent gap, maybe they're on even ground here. But, you look at this Giants team, and the one thing that they've done that I think is going to enable them to match up better with the Cowboys in this game is they've added speed on both sides of the ball.
Mhm.
We're talking receivers with Darren Waller. Good luck covering him. I mean, for years, the Cowboys had Jason Witten, who was virtually uncovered. You couldn't cover that guy, with a blanket.
Even when he was 38 years old, he was
Even
still
when he was
finding ways to
38
get
years
open.
old. So the Giants now have their version of Jason Witten, hopefully as good as, because Jason Witten, I'm sure, is a Hall of Famer. Um, Darren Waller, really big receiving target. He
Mhm.
and Daniel Jones have looked just on point all summer long, and really excited to see what he's able to do as far as drawing coverage in and freeing things up for the one-on-one matchups on the outside. They also, of course, have Saquon Barkley coming back, coming off that great year that he had last year. They've added Paris Campbell at receiver. They have Darius Slayton coming back, Isaiah Hodgins, a lot more speed, and the goal for the Giants offense to be more explosive this year. Last year, the Giants ranked last in the NFL with 28 big pass plays of 20 or more yards. Defensively, same thing. They've added speed. And, we talk about the Cowboys receivers, CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, Michael Gallup. The Giants have added speed on the back end of the defense. They've added Deontay Banks. Jason Pinnock's going to be the new
Mhm.
strong safety. Bobby Okereke, a linebacker that they brought over from the Colts via free agency. They've added Isaiah Simmons, who they got in a trade for the Cardinals. So speed is the name of the game. And, you add that in with the fact that the Giants can now play better matchup football. And this isn't going to be your same Giants team that the Cowboys have basically won. I think I think it's 10 of the last 11 games or something like that. I know the
Yeah.
Cowboys have basically dominated the Giants when they played them, as far as wins and losses. But things might be changing this
Well,
year.
and I'll say really quickly, over the last couple of years, one of the spots that the Cowboys have really been able to expose of the Giants is the linebackers. Like that's just a spot, whether it was Tay Crowder or Jalen Smith, like whoever they had, the Cowboys usually felt pretty good about their running backs and the tight ends, and that's why even somebody like Dalton Schultz had some monster games against the Giants, bringing in Okereke, getting some, even Isaiah Simmons, who has his issues. It just gives them more athleticism that they didn't have in the past. And when you have that Wink Martindale defense that's going to be so aggressive, you better have linebackers that can play in space. I do think the Giants have improved there. We'll see how much they can have an impact, at least in week one. I'm sure they're going to be better the more they play, but week one against this Cowboys offense is going to be a good test.
Yes, absolutely. A good litmus test to see just how far the Giants have come. So we're going to talk about matchups coming up in our next segment. So don't go anywhere, folks. Hey, football fans, if you're looking for a fun and different way to play fantasy football this season, you need to check out Prize Picks. Just pick 2 or more players, predict their stats, and sit back and see how they perform. It takes less than 60 seconds to make an entry. And best of all, you can turn a few bucks into some nice cash with the right projections. Prize Picks is the #1 daily fantasy sports app, known for its quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and wide selection of players and stat types. And they offer weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday, when each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value. So what are you waiting for? Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL, and that promo code is LockedOnNFL for your first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, everybody, welcome back to this special crossover edition. Locked On Giants, Locked On Cowboys. The New York Giants host the Dallas Cowboys Sunday night, MetLife Stadium. It's going to be rocking. What better way to start the 2023 season? Never mind Thursday Night Football. 2 NFC East teams seeing each other very early on. A good litmus test for both of them. Some big time matchups in this game. And Marcus, what are the matchups that you think are going to be key from a Dallas perspective?
Well, you already mentioned the name. It's Darren Waller. When Darren Waller is healthy, he's one of the most dynamic tight ends in all of football. I was just looking at some of his stats from like 2019, 2020 with the Raiders, but There's only a couple players in the league that can have 15 catches for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns at the tight end position. And Darren Waller's one of them when he's right. The Cowboys do have some players that can match up with him. Ron Kearse is a 6'4", 220-pound safety. Leighton Vander Esch is 6'4", 255 pounds. But I'm not sure anybody can cover him one-on-one. So I'm going to be interested to see who do the Cowboys put on him? What type of bracket coverage do they use against Darren Waller? Because if the Cowboys can't stop Waller, I expect this Giants offense to be really efficient. But if they can, and Daniel Jones is having to throw the ball down the field, going, testing Trayvon Diggs and Stephon Gilmore, I think that's where the Cowboys can have an advantage.
All right. I have 2 matchups in mind, and to me, they're equally important. And I've got to start off with the Giants offensive line versus that Cowboys defensive front. The Giants have a rookie center, John Michael Schmitz. I still don't know for sure who the starting left guard is going to be or if they're going to do a rotation.
Mm-hmm.
Evan Neal has looked a little bit better, but is he where he needs to be? Dan Quinn, the Dallas Cowboys defensive coordinator, is going to bring everything he's got at that Giants offensive line. He's going to test them early. We're probably going to see exotic blitzes and stunts and twists and all kinds of funky stuff just to test that offensive line. Because right now, I think if you were to ask anybody who covers the Giants, any Giant fan, they would probably all agree that the biggest question mark on this Giants team is that offensive line, which is not yet settled. So I'm curious to see how that plays out, once the 2 teams take the field. Marcus, do you think Dan Quinn is going to do a lot of blitzing against the Giants? I know that, Wink Martindale is the king of blitzing and fancy stuff, but Dan Quinn's no slouch in that category.
Yeah, we've got 2 of the most aggressive defensive coordinators in the league going up against each other, which is going to make it a lot of fun, right? These 2 guys are not passive at all when it comes to blitzing. Yeah, I expect the Cowboys to blitz a lot, and I expect them to do some wild things, such as there's going to be some snaps where you have DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons lining up on the same side next to each other just to try to create some confusion. And they're going to run stunts, and they're going to have plays where Parsons is lined up directly over the center. They're going to try to make things really tough on Daniel Jones so he doesn't feel comfortable. To me, this is the Cowboys' biggest strength, is their pass rush. And I think they know that the Giants have some weaknesses there. It's why the Cowboys were able to win the game in New York last year, despite playing Cooper rushes, because they got so much pressure. If they can't get pressure with their front 4 and they have to resort to blitzing 5, 6, 7 guys, I do think that's where the Giants might be able to create some chunk plays in the passing game.
All right. Now, before I give you my other matchup that I'm curious to see how it plays out, I've got to ask you, because we haven't really talked about him a whole lot this summer, and maybe that's good, but Saquon Barkley's coming back. All the focus has been on Darren Waller and the matchup nightmare that he can create. Saquon obviously is back, after resolving his contract situation for now. This is a guy who I think is going to be utilized more in the passing game. Obviously, he can run the ball. I mean, what kind of a concern does Saquon pose for the Cowboys defense?
Oh, he's always a big concern, because you can have everything bottled up and have all the gaps filled, and he can still find ways to bounce things outside and make a big run or break a couple tackles, and all of a sudden he's gone for 50 yards. You just have to be really, really disciplined. And for the most part, the Cowboys have done a good job of stopping Saquon throughout his career. But this might be the healthiest that they've ever faced Saquon. So again, week 1, early year, with not a lot of wear and tear on his tires, I expect Saquon to look really good in this game. Yeah,
for sure. Saquon is basically rested. I mean, they monitored his reps, didn't play him in the preseason. Just Saquon is primed and ready and determined to have a big year, because he still wants that big payday, which unfortunately he did not get this past offseason. All right, let me give you my other matchup that I'm very curious to see how it plays out. And that is the Giants cornerbacks versus the Cowboys receivers. And in particular, Adoree Jackson versus CeeDee Lamb. Now, this past summer, the Giants had Adoree Jackson taking quite a bit of snaps in the slot, which is kind of a new position for him. He did a little bit of that last year, did more of it this summer. That was made possible by the emergence of rookie Trey Hawkins, their 6th-round draft pick, who, along with Deonte Banks, would line up on the outside when Adoree comes down in the slot. CeeDee Lamb, the Cowboys' #1 receiver, plays a lot in the slot. Last year, CeeDee Lamb toasted Adoree Jackson. I think Adoree gave up, I want to say, 6 of 7 pass plays to CeeDee Lamb. I know he had the one-handed touchdown grab, and I want to say 57 yards and 4 first downs, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So that matchup is very interesting to me. You know, how is Adoree going to function in the slot if he sees a lot of time in the slot, or, you know, just what are they going to do to counter CeeDee Lamb? You know, Marcus, how do you think that might play out? I mean, that would be a new wrinkle, obviously, that the Cowboys haven't seen. How do they deal mostly with these new wrinkles that come up?
Yeah, I think the Cowboys would like to try to get CeeDee Lamb away from Adoree Jackson, just because he is their best secondary player. And while CeeDee Lamb did have some success against them last year, I don't think that's a player that you want to challenge all that frequently. So what the Cowboys have been doing in the preseason and in training camp is finding different ways to get like Michael Gallup in the slot if they want to leave Adoree Jackson, get a little bit more size, and then you'll have somebody like CeeDee Lamb against Deonte Banks. But for me in this game, it's all about Brandon Cooks. No matter who covers Brandon Cooks, I don't think it'll be Adoree Jackson if he's playing in the slot. If it's Brandon Cooks against Hawkins, who you mentioned is a 6th-round pick that's had a really nice training camp and a really nice preseason, it's still this is a receiver who is going into year 9 right now, and he's basically a lock to get 1,000 yards every year. You leave him alone in single coverage, more often than not, he's going to have success. Now, he is playing with a new quarterback and a new system, and it's going to take some time, but I've got to believe that this is a game where the Cowboys are going to lean on Brandon Cooks a lot because he's going to see a lot of favorable one-on-one matchups. And I think the Giants, especially in Wink Martindale's defense that loves the blitz, they're going to have to leave Banks or Hawkins on an island one-on-one and hope that they can survive.
Marcus, I mentioned for the Giants, the offensive line is my biggest concern. What's your biggest concern for the Cowboys in this game?
Just rust. I mean, this is a team that just didn't do really anything in the preseason. We didn't see any starters on offense, only a select few starters on defense play. I expect the crowd to be loud. I expect the Giants to be aggressive. We talked about Wink Martindale blitzing a lot. We should also talk about the offensive line. Zach Martin missed all of training camp with this holdout. Terrence Steele is coming off an ACL and MCL injury, just got rewarded with a new big payday. Tyler Smith, the Cowboys starting left guard, hurt his hamstring in Monday's practice. We'll see if he's going to be able to go on Sunday. They have absolutely no depth on the offensive line behind him. And then there's Tyron Smith, who has really struggled to stay healthy, did not play left tackle at all last year after an injury. I just worry with all the changing pieces on the offensive line, the changing play caller, the new receivers, no Dalton Schultz. You have Jake Ferguson starting at tight end. I think this offense is going to be really good in time, but in week 1, I wouldn't be surprised if this is a team that has, 7 points after the first half, and it's looks just a little clunky on that side of the ball.
All right, interesting. I mean, I'd sit here and say I'd feel sorry for you about the offensive line, but the Giants have their own offensive line.
Who doesn't? Who doesn't feel bad about their offensive line?
I know. I mean, every locked on host I've talked to, I'm like, what's your number one concern? Oh, the offensive line, because it does all start up front in the trenches. All right, coming up next, we've got predictions and final thoughts about the big NFC clash Sunday night. Giants, Cowboys, MetLife Stadium. Don't go anywhere. Hey, football fans, these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available, right? So that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. I myself have used LinkedIn Jobs to find aspiring writers and editors for Giants Country, the site that I run over on SI's Fan Nation. And the process is not only super easy, but a big time saver. Simply add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. And simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so that you can quickly prioritize whom you'd like to interview and hire. So don't spend time sorting through endless resumes and dead-end leads. Put LinkedIn Jobs to work to you today for free by visiting linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. Terms and conditions apply. Hey, everybody. Thanks for making Locked On your first listen every day. The Locked On Ultimate NFL season preview is here. The 7-episode extravaganza brings opinions, analysis, and plenty of debate from all 32 of our Locked On NFL hosts with added insights from our national experts. It's a can't-miss series before the season kicks off. Catch every episode on Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, everybody, welcome back to this special crossover edition. New York Giants, Dallas Cowboys, week 1. It's going to be a good one. I'm excited. I know you guys are excited. Marcus, you're probably excited about it. And it is now time for predictions. Now, according to our friends over at FanDuel, the Giants are a 3.5-point underdog, believe it or not, against the Cowboys. Marcus, what's your take? What do you think the final score will be? And do you think the Cowboys are going to cover, or do you think there's going to be an upset in the making?
This just feels like a 3-point game to me either way, right? Like it's a Cowboys Giants NFC East divisional game. Dallas playing on the road on Sunday Night Football. I just have a hard time believing that this game doesn't come down to the last possession or two. I mentioned out top how I'm a little worried about the clunkiness of the offense for the Cowboys. I'm a little bit worried about the offensive line. I think we're going to have one of those, 17-17 type of games going into the last 6 minutes of the game. And it really comes down to this for me. I think Michael Parsons is ready to have one of those years, like a defensive player of the year type of season. And he's ready. I've never seen a player look more dominant in training camp and on a primetime stage. We know he always shows out. He was absolutely phenomenal in the week 1 game last year against Tampa Bay. I think against this offensive line, I think he's ready to put on a show. I'm going to say that Parsons has 2 sacks, a couple game-changing plays, and the Cowboys win 20-17 in a really ugly, low-scoring game.
20-17. So you're predicting a 10-point victory.
No, 20-17.
So 20-17. I'm sorry.
20,
I thought you said
yeah, we're going a field goal right at the end. So I
thought you said 27.
Yeah, no, you're good. I just think this is going to be a really close NFC East game.
All right, cool enough. Yeah, I'm with you. I think this is going to be a tight game. The last 2 games, if I'm not mistaken, the Cowboys have won by 8 points or less. So that was last year when the Giants really didn't have, household receivers, early on. They were still trying to figure out their offense a little bit. Daniel Jones, was he going to be good? Was Saquon going to be Saquon again? The defense played without Kayvon Thibodeau, who was dealing with a knee injury. There were a lot of question marks for the Giants, but yet they still managed, like I said, in the 2 games they played, it was 8 points or less last year against the Cowboys. This year, I think the Giants, first off, they're healthy. That's a big, plus. This time last year, there were guys that just, like I said, Thibodeau wasn't able to play. You had question marks about Saquon and how good he was going to be. You don't have question marks regarding the team's health. I mean, maybe a couple here and there, but nothing major. The offense has looked more explosive, but you take that with a grain of salt a little bit, because it's like your team's offense going against your team's defense, and it's always like,
sure,
okay, which is better? Who screwed up and who didn't. That all being said, I think the Giants are going to, I think they averaged under 25 points last year. I think they're going to top that this year. I feel pretty good about their ability to score points. Darren Waller, as you said, is probably going to be a nightmare to cover. So I think he's going to have a big game. On defense, good luck picking who you're going to block or double team up front from that Giants defensive 7. Is it going to be Thibodeau? Is it going to be Azeez Ojulari? Is it going to be Leonard Williams? Is it going to be Dexter Lawrence? Or is it going to be Isaiah Simmons? Who's it going to be, So pick your poison there. I think the Giants are going to beat the Cowboys. And you know what? I'm going to go with a 7-point Giants victory. I'm going to say 27-20.
Interesting. It wouldn't shock me. Week 1 games tend to be a little bit random, right? I think most people would project. I mean, we can see it by FanDuel's win totals. The Cowboys have higher odds of winning the division, higher win total. But Week 1 games are weird, especially division games. And being this is a Sunday night game in New York, the Giants did play some of their starters in the preseason and frankly looked really good doing so. I think Brian Daboll's a really good coach. It wouldn't shock me at all.
Yeah, and as we've been talking about on the show, we've been talking about some of the new wrinkles that the two teams haven't seen. Mike McCarthy obviously calling the plays. Mike McCarthy has called plays before when he was with the Packers, but now it's a different, personnel group, talents and strengths and weaknesses and stuff like that. The question marks in the trenches are the Giants. Will the Giants' offensive line hold up? That to me is the biggest X factor, I think, at this point. So, a lot of things that we're going to learn about both teams. Obviously, this is a big game, not just because it's the week 1, but it's a division game. So it actually counts as 1.5 games for the winner because they take the head-to-head tiebreaker. And the two teams don't see each other, I don't think, until like after the midpoint of the season, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's a big game. It's why I typically don't love playing division games early in the season. Is you're still trying to work out some of the, the messes and all that kind of stuff and go through all the injuries, and we'll see. I'm excited. Cowboys Giants Sunday Night Football doesn't get any better than that.
No, it doesn't. And as you said, it's been a while since the two teams have squared off on the week 1 opener. This time the Giants got them at home. The stadium's going to be rocking. And folks, make sure you keep it here on the Locked On Giants podcast and also the Locked On Cowboys podcast, because we're going to bring you everything you need to know leading up to the game and thereafter. So you don't want to miss our episodes. We're so thankful that you chose to make us your first listen of the day, or if you watch on YouTube, your first watch of the day. Be sure to check out our other Locked On podcasts that we have. We've got so many of them. Regardless of what team you like, we've got a podcast for you. So hopefully you'll check that out. And folks, for Marcus Mosher, I'm Patricia Traina. Thank you for tuning into this crossover edition. And we will see you on our respective shows again tomorrow.